When Thomas Jefferson put pen to parchment in 1776, crafting the most influential declaration of human liberty in modern history, a thunder lizard lay silent beneath his feet. Not metaphorically, but literally. Across the valleys and hills of colonial America, the bones of a forgotten world slept, waiting for their stories to be unearthed. The men who forged the American experiment knew nothing of dinosaurs, not because they lacked imagination, but because they lived in a time before the ancient Earth had revealed its deepest secrets. The story of the discovery of dinosaurs, and their utter absence from the minds of the founding fathers, is a fascinating tale of shifting worldviews, scientific revolution, and the humbling realization that human history is a blink in geologic time. A world without dinosaurs, the 18th century understanding of Earth in the late 1700s, when George Washington was rallying troops and Benjamin Franklin was charming the courts of France, the prevailing view of Earth's history was constrained by religious tradition and limited science. The Bible, particularly the book of Genesis, was widely interpreted, especially in the English-speaking world, as a literal account of Earth's creation. By calculations such as those of Irish Archbishop James Ussher, the Earth was said to have been created in 4004 BCE, making it barely 6,000 years old. The natural world was certainly full of mystery, but it wasn't yet a window into deep time. Fossils were known, curious seashells on mountaintops, mysterious bones found in caves or plowed fields, but they were often misunderstood. Some scholars thought fossils were the remains of animals carried to strange places by the biblical flood. Others believed they were sports of nature rock formations that just happened to resemble living things. The very idea that entire species could go extinct, much less that titanic reptiles once roamed the land, was either controversial or unthinkable. This was the intellectual backdrop against which America's founding fathers lived. They were products of the Enlightenment, rational, curious, and deeply engaged with science, but even they were bound by the scientific limits of their age. Jefferson's mammoth mistake. Thomas Jefferson, often called the father of American paleontology, had a keen interest in natural history. But even he could not imagine extinction. When massive bones, later identified as belonging to the now extinct American mastodon, were discovered in the Ohio River Valley, Jefferson became fascinated. He ordered detailed studies, and even had some bones sent to him. But here's the crucial twist: Jefferson didn't believe these animals were gone. He was convinced that such giant creatures must still exist in the unexplored wilds of North America. In fact, he speculated that Lewis and Clark might encounter them on their famous expedition. To him, the idea of extinction was not only unproven but also incompatible with a perfect, divinely designed world. If God made all creatures for a purpose, how could any of them disappear? Jefferson's refusal to believe in extinction speaks volumes about the intellectual context of the early United States. The very notion of a deep, dynamic Earth, an Earth that changes dramatically over time, erasing species and raising up new ones, was still foreign. The dinosaur awakens discovery in the 19th century. The word dinosaur did not exist when America declared independence. It would not be coined until 1842, by English paleontologist Richard Owen. The first dinosaur fossils to be scientifically recognized as such, fragments of Megalosaurus, Iguanodon, and Hylaeosaurus, were found in England in the early 1800s. Even then, the image of dinosaurs was nothing like our modern vision of dynamic, often bird-like beasts. Early illustrations showed them as bloated, elephantine reptiles with sprawling limbs, more crocodile than creature of Jurassic Park. In America, the first major dinosaur discoveries occurred in the mid-19th century. In 1858, the nearly complete skeleton of Hadrosaurus phocei was found in a marl pit in Haddonfield, New Jersey. It was the first dinosaur known from more than isolated bones, and more importantly, it was reconstructed in a standing, bipedal posture. This began to reshape how scientists, and the public, understood these creatures. The real explosion in American dinosaur research came with the bone wars of the late 1800s, a bitter and sometimes absurd rivalry between paleontologists Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. Their feud led to the discovery and naming of over 130 dinosaur species and cemented North America as a treasure trove of prehistoric life. But all this was decades after the deaths of Jefferson, Washington, Adams, and Franklin. The founders lived and died without knowing dinosaurs had ever existed. What the founders missed, and why it matters. It's staggering to think that men who dreamed up an entirely new political order and experimented with democracy still didn't know that Tyrannosaurus rex once stalked what is now South Dakota. They debated the rights of man, but not the fate of monstrous reptiles buried beneath their new republic. But this isn't just a quirky historical coincidence. It underscores how human understanding is always provisional, always incomplete. The founders built a new nation with Enlightenment ideals, but even the Enlightenment had blind spots. Their science was rooted in the best knowledge available, but that knowledge had not yet pierced the veil of geologic time. If Jefferson had known about Stegosaurus or Allosaurus, how might it have shaped his worldview? Would the idea of extinction and deep time have challenged his Enlightenment optimism, or merely expanded it? Would the fragile triumph of democracy seem even more precarious when set against a backdrop of vanished worlds? The eventual discovery of dinosaurs forced humanity to grapple with its own smallness. The age of reptiles, which spanned over 150 million years, makes our own species' tenure look like an afterthought. This humbling realization was not available to the founders. They imagined a world of timeless natural law, where science could uncover eternal truths. They didn't yet know that the Earth itself was a stage of ever-changing cast members, with human civilization arriving just before the curtain call. Yet perhaps that ignorance was also a kind of blessing, the belief in progress, in rational institutions, in the perfectibility of man, all hallmarks of the Enlightenment, helped fuel the American experiment. Only later would science pull back the curtain to reveal a much longer and stranger play. In conclusion, beneath the marble and monuments. Today, when you walk the National Mall or visit Monticello, you do so with a kind of X-ray vision the founders lacked. You know that beneath those stately grounds lie sediments from ancient seas, the bones of ancient creatures, and evidence of a world unimaginably old. The republic they built was young and full of promise, but it stood atop a land shaped by forces they could not yet imagine. Dinosaurs remind us that we are latecomers to a very old Earth. The founding fathers never saw the bones, never heard the name. But in a way, their work, founding a nation built on inquiry and reason, helped ensure that future generations would dig deeper, question more, and uncover the hidden past. In that sense, even if they didn't know about dinosaurs, they helped build the world in which they could be discovered.